It's time to go.
Flawless. Yeah.
Time to go.
Flawless, yeah. Every time.
Well, it's Thursday night, everybody. That means it's time for AMA, Ask Me Anything. My name is Pete Baker. We're with Alta Vista Assembly in beautiful, bucolic East Bakersfield. And we'll be with you for the next 30 minutes or so, taking some good questions that have kind of piled up on us, Skippy, because we were out last week. You declared it a national holiday, your birthday.
Yes. That was
but
the week before.
Oh, okay.
You don't even know my birthday, and you know me my whole life, and you don't know my birthday.
Yeah, well.
And I know yours.
It's not top of mind, as they say.
You know, maybe you have a calendar on your phone or something, man.
Anyway, so we've been out for a bit, but we are back tonight, and we've got a little backlog, but we're going to line them up and knock them down. I'm joined tonight, as always, by Matthew, who is the moderator and the producer, and just an all-around curious fellow. And he's going to be running things tonight, as always. So, Matt, do us all a favor, greet the people, and tell us how we play the game.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this lovely Thursday night. The way it works is, as it always works, submit your questions in the comments. We'll read those ones first. If you want to remain anonymous, you can send us a Facebook message on Facebook, or you can send us we have a website form you can fill out too. You can also go ask questions on YouTube if you're asking questions there. You know, I see those as well.
You're monitoring all of those things.
Yeah. And then
my admiration for you has skyrocketed.
Yeah, I'm sure. But that's how it works pretty much. So, yeah.
Well, let us proceed.
Missionary Bal Das said, hi, good morning from Nepal.
Hello, hello, hello.
Good morning.
Yeah,
good morning.
He's one of my Friday friends.
My mom is watching as well.
Hello, Mom.
She called the family or the Alta Vista group chat today. She pocket dialed it while she was working. That was funny.
Well, there we go.
All right, so I'm going to start us off with this question here. Let me pull it up here. Is having a movie night at a cemetery disrespectful?
Ripped from the local headlines, Skippy.
Yeah, it was.
For those not in our area, that's been a wee bit of a controversy the last, well, I don't know, it's been about a 2-day story, I guess. One of our local cemeteries, and I don't really know all the details, but they want to have a movie night on Halloween or around Halloween.
I don't know if it's on Halloween.
Is it a scary movie? I don't even know the story.
I didn't even click on the story. I just read the article and laughed at myself.
Well, I know that they have called down fire on their own heads with this, which I feel badly for them. But anyway, so the question is it a good idea? I would say manifestly not. There was a juggler, movie comedian, vaudevillian by the name of W.C. Fields. Not as famous today as he once was, but a great comic. And one of his lines one time was, everything that I enjoy is either illegal, immoral, or fattening. And it's not the case that, having a movie night on cemetery grounds is illegal. It's not a transgression, of some written law or something, or maybe even an unwritten law. It's one of those things that I think is evidence that we have coarsened a little bit. And there are some things that are just not appropriate. Those grounds to some people, for some families, that plot of earth where their loved ones' remains are interred, it almost takes on a semi-sacredness. Now, right or wrong, that's the way it is. And so, the idea of having a movie night, and I know it's kind of a thing at some of the notable cemeteries in the LA area that have people like Rudolph Valentino interred and other people like that. They've been doing it for a long time. So maybe the local cemetery is kind of experimenting with that idea. But to me, it is an inappropriate idea. It's an inappropriate concept because I could see how it would be offensive to some families, insensitive perhaps, because that space is special, for some families. Now, some graves are long forgotten, and everybody's moved on, and nobody remembers who that marker is referencing. But for some, it's still relevant. And I think about the people who have recently buried, a loved one or interred a loved one in that area. And it may be especially painful for them. So what I'm saying is it's not illegal. Maybe it doesn't cross a lot of lines, but it's not appropriate.
But if your family pays a lot of money, and it costs a lot of money to bury someone, right? If your family pays all that money to have you buried there, and they put all this effort into it, and then you just let people come in and use it as a movie theater, like a public space.
Yeah.
I get that part is really wrong, but I also get the other side where some people, it's maybe part of their culture that they want to go hang out with their dead relatives.
It is, and they can do that on an individual basis. I think the offense comes in where you would invite in a large group of people to have kind of a fun night, a light moment in the cemetery. I mean, it's being done at this time of year, the Halloween season, if you want to think of it that way. It's kind of semi-spooky and all of that. And it's just not appropriate. That's not what the grounds are for. That's not what they were dedicated for. That's not what most people understand they're for. That's certainly not what most people who are interred there understood. That they would be
having a movie night,
have a movie shown over top of them.
If my family's buried there, can I get in? Because I'm guessing they're going to charge, right? Do we get in free?
Yeah, well, it opens up a whole lot of things. I haven't followed the story. I don't know if this local.
Verna said they're planning to show Frankenweenie and The Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah, not appropriate. I happen to like both of those movies, but not in that setting. There are other settings that would be more appropriate. But again, I think it's indicative of maybe how our culture has shifted, that it would even be considered. I hope they don't go through with it, again, because of the sensitivity, especially of people who have recently interred a loved one there. It would be especially hurtful for them, I would think. And they should be considered first.
I'm asking Verna if they're charging. All right, so the next question. If prayer is effective, why do so many prayers seem to go unanswered, especially in desperate situations?
Well, the assumption is there that one assumption is correct, one assumption is incorrect, that prayer is effective. The Bible says the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous person avails much. It accomplishes much. Prayer does what other things cannot do. Prayer goes places that you can never physically go. Prayer can affect events. Prayer can affect people. Prayer can affect the unseen realm because it is a spiritual exercise first and foremost. So prayer is effective. That part is a correct assumption. I think the incorrect assumption is that prayers go unanswered. I don't believe any prayer goes unanswered. Somebody a long time ago said your prayer will either get a yes or a no or a wait. But those are not non-answers. Those are all answers. So I don't believe a genuine prayer goes unanswered. Now, the answers may not be what we're looking for. It may come from an unexpected source. It may come later. It may come in a way that we never could have imagined. Partly because when we ask God for something, there are so many working parts, to reality, that for this to change or for this to be altered or for this to have a different outcome than we assume it would naturally have, there are a lot of working parts that have to be, considered in that. And there are so many working parts, and it is such an intricate thing to have a prayer answered yes or no or wait, that only God can do it. And we can't even really begin to understand or to express what's involved in that process. But we do know that prayer is effective. That is true. All prayer is answered It may not be answered the way you think it should, or the way you anticipate, or the way you heard prayers, similar prayers get answered. I'm thinking of the great welterweight, middleweight champion, Ray Robinson, arguably the pound for pound best boxer that has ever laced on a pair of gloves. I don't think he'll ever be equaled, certainly not surpassed. But he had a crisis of faith experience when his older sister was gravely ill. He was Roman Catholic, he went into their parish, their church, and he spent a long time, all night, one night, praying for her that she would be rescued, she would be saved. And he felt an assurance in his spirit that the Lord was telling him, your sister is going to be saved. His sister, in fact, did not survive. She passed away some days later. And it took Robinson a while, and it took some wise counsel to point out to him that his sister really was rescued, his sister really was saved, his sister really was given the best attention that the Lord could give because she was in his presence. And there is nothing better than that. Now, it wasn't the answer he was looking for, but he did get an answer. And he came to grips with the reality that God's answer was better than what he would have asked for on a number of different levels and planes. So, again, if you get a yes, you get a no, you get a wait. But really, no prayer goes unanswered if it's a genuine prayer.
You have to know how to listen for those answers too, right? You can't.
And you have to be willing to wait. Well, I talked about this last Sunday in the message. Are you willing to wait? We have the same experience here, but on a much diminished level from what God faces every day, about 6 million times a day. And I've had the experience of people ask a question, even in this venue, but they don't wait for the answer. Partly because you're not giving them the answer they want, or the answer is more involved than they imagined. And so many times you get asked questions that people are not willing to wait for an answer. It may take a long time to explain the answer. On Tuesday night, I usually frame what we're doing on Tuesday night in my own mind as a question first, and it takes us about an hour and 15 minutes to answer a question adequately, thoroughly, and probably not completely. So you've got to be willing to wait, and you've got to be sensitive. And it may not come in the way you think. I'm thinking of the Elijah story. He needed desperately to hear from God, and he waited outside the cave, and there was a cataclysm of fire, but the voice of God was not in that. He anticipated that it would be. There was an earthquake, and huge boulders come tumbling down the side of the mountain, but God was not in that. He did not hear the voice of God until everything got quiet, and then he heard the still small voice of God. He couldn't hear the still small voice because of the cataclysms, the interrupting noise, the signal jamming and the circuit jamming. And there's a lot of noise around us. And God is answering, but you're right. We have to be in a listening mood. We have to be sensitive. That's what the Bible means when it says, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. Just because you have ears doesn't mean you're listening. You've got to have ears to hear.
All right, we've had this one on the books for a while. Was Jesus Jewish?
Great question. Without qualification, yes. We have to remember that the New Testament, which many people assume is the least Jewish part of the Bible, we have to remember that virtually every book of the New Testament, with the exception of possibly only one, the Gospel of Luke, was written by Jews, to Jews, for Jews, about Jews. Most of the New Testament church was almost exclusively Jewish until it began to move into other parts of the empire. But originally it was a Jewish movement. This is what Paul talks about in Romans 9, 10, and 11 when it says that this movement, the Jesus movement, it is attached to the larger olive tree, which is Judaism. And you can think of Christianity as a form of Judaism because Jesus is a Jewish Messiah. So is Jesus Jewish? Yes. The New Testament is by Jews, about Jews, for Jews, to Jews. And we have to read it with that in mind. But Jesus was every bit an observant Jew. He observed, there's plenty of evidence, ample evidence that he observed the traditional feasts. He went up to Jerusalem at appointed times for Passover and Tabernacles. He observed Yom Kippur, which we're in the middle of that season right now. He very probably was Orthodox to the point that he wore his prayer shawl called a talit, because the woman who went seeking healing for her issue of blood, many years she had gone through this. No doctor had been able to help her. And she realized if I could touch the hem of his garment, and she was talking about the tzitzit, the corners of his prayer shawl that would have been worn under his cloak. Many Orthodox Jewish men today wear it under their shirt or under their jacket, and you'll see it if you see them in public. There will be these little fringes.
Why do they always walk to church? Sorry, I always see them walking down Ming on Saturdays. Why do they walk to the? There's a reason for it, isn't there?
Yeah. We have a Chabad center here very close, and I know the rabbi there. He's a friend.
I always see him walking.
Yes, that's his family that you see walking. They are Hasidic Jews, which is a type of Orthodox Jew, and they observe, will not use their automobile, their vehicle on Saturday, because a couple of times I've seen him out walking, and I've said, "Hey, Rabbi, I'll give you a lift." No, and then I remember it's Saturday. They are allowed to walk 2/3 of a mile, and he lives about that far away. His home, their home, is about that far away from the synagogue, so that's why you see him walking. But Jesus was in every sense an observant Jew. That's why the woman said, if I could touch the hem of his garment, that was referred to as the wing. And so he dressed the part, he lived the part, he ate the part, he ate kosher food. He was a frequent visitor to the synagogue. We see him doing that, where they would discuss the Torah and other portions of the Bible. As a visiting rabbi, he was often, you see that in the Gospels, invited to come up to the front, open the scrolls from the ark, and lay it on the bima, the bench, and begin to read and then to expound from that. One great instance is in Luke chapter 4, where he does that. So he was in every sense a Jewish rabbi, an Orthodox, in our parlance, an Orthodox rabbi. He was very much a Second Temple Jew. And so all of those things were observed by him. He was careful to do that. He's in every sense a Jewish Messiah. And in every sense, he lived the life of an Orthodox Jewish man.
So why did Jews not accept him as the Messiah? What's like the main reason?
This is a personal question for me. I believe because what Paul was afraid of in Romans 9, 10, and 11, he is writing to the church at Rome, which it seems had Jewish leaders, but a sizable portion, perhaps a majority of the members of the church at Rome were non-Jews. So you had Jewish Jesus followers in leadership, and you had predominantly non-Jewish Jesus followers in membership. And he looks ahead and he sees some of the turmoil that could result there. And so he says in Romans 9, 10, and 11, among many other things, he says to those non-Jewish Jesus followers, be very careful how you treat Jewish Jesus followers. Be extremely careful how you treat Jewish people who are not embracing Jesus Christ at this time. Because he foresaw, and it horrified him to think that the church, that Christians would forget their Jewish roots, which we have. That's what he talks about with the olive tree and the branches. We've been grafted on, and grow out of Judaism. That's why I say Christianity can be thought of as a form of Judaism. And he foresaw the possibility that the church would, if many Jews did not embrace, and it continued as he thought it would, that it will become predominantly non-Jewish in membership, even in leadership. He foresaw the possibility that those non-Jewish Christians, Jesus followers, would begin to discount the experience of the Jewish Jesus followers, and would in fact say that the church has replaced Israel. That is what a bulk of the church has believed and taught for a long, long time. It really gathered a head of steam during the later Middle Ages and into the Reformation period. And it's still with us today. Most churches, most church leaders believe that they are the new Israel. The Bible doesn't countenance that. And Paul is saying, I don't want that to happen. And so here are some things that you need to think about in Romans 9, 10, 11. How you treat Jewish Jesus followers, but especially how you treat Jews who have not embraced Jesus. Because if you begin to say that you're a replacement and they're out, and that God no longer has a living covenant with them, you're going to alienate them. You're going to isolate them. And I can tell you that many Jews today have the idea, and they didn't invent it on their own, they got it from the church, that they are considered on the outside, that God is finished with Israel, that God has set them aside in favor of the church. And the Bible says no such thing. And that was the thing that horrified Paul, that it could happen, and it has happened. And that is largely why many Jewish people have the idea that the New Testament is an anti-Jewish book. It is not. When read correctly, as I said, it's by Jews, for Jews, about Jews, to Jews, predominantly. And the way we have often told the story, it has not projected that reality. And so the reason that many Jews are skeptical of the Jesus claim can be laid at the feet of Christians, not necessarily Jews. And the thing that Paul was afraid would happen, it has happened. Anti-Semitism grew out of that, and we know the results of that.
Uma Singh said, praise the Lord, shalom from Fiji. Shalom.
Fiji, shalom to Fiji.
All right, so we got probably time for one more here. Could Satan choose not to do what the Bible says he's going to do?
Okay, the way that's phrased, it's one of those little
Gotcha.
conundrum things. Yeah, a little gotcha question, like can God create a rock so big he can't pick it up? It's really more of a linguistic puzzle than it is reflective of reality. But it gives me an opportunity to say this. The character we think of as Satan, and in reality, according to the Hebrew scriptures, and even it bleeds into the thinking of the New Testament, there is not one Satan. The word Satan is not a personal name. It is a designation. It's a descriptor. In fact, in the Hebrew, it is Ha-Satan, the Satan. Now, we wouldn't say the Matthew. We wouldn't say the Tino. We would call them by name if that were their name. But Satan, Satan, is not a proper name. It's a description. It's a title. It means adversary. And in the Hebrew scriptures, there are a number of Ha-Satans. There are a number of adversaries, people that are in adversarial relationship to the people of God or the plan of God or to God himself. But very interestingly, there are a couple of times in the Hebrew scriptures where even Yahweh, God, is described as an adversary, as a Ha-Satan. What that means is there are many Ha-Satans, okay? So when we say Satan, we mean a particular individual, a particular divine being that's malevolent and vicious and is chaotic, a chaos agent. But in actuality, there are many Ha-Satans, okay? But let's just zero in on the one we think of as the devil, because the devil is a Ha-Satan. Now, that is an individual. He is, and all of the rest of them are divine beings. We are human beings, they are divine beings. We don't have time to go into that. That's the stuff we do on Tuesday night in our second look, and you can pick that up online as well, 6 o'clock on Tuesday night. We live stream that.
6:15 or
6:15-ish, 6:10-ish. Usually because I'm just too busy yakking away and you're frantically trying to tell me it's time to start and I'm not paying attention. But anyway, that's the sort of thing, the divine being and the relationship to the unseen realm is what we tackle on that night. But the devil is a divine being, for the most part unembodied spirit, but very real. The unseen realm is very real. and he is a part of that. I won't go into his pedigree and where he came from. Again, we do that on Tuesdays. But he is vicious, he has malevolent intent, he is in rebellion, and he seeks the destruction of every human being. Jesus put it this way: his agenda is to kill, steal, and destroy by any means possible. And that includes families and nations and individuals. That's what he does. And so he is a divine being, but he's not a human being. And divine beings are not as multifaceted emotionally or psychologically in their makeup, in their function, as human beings are. We have much more agency. That's why the Bible says that right now we're lower than those divine beings, but one day we will judge them and we will rule over them. Because human beings have the ability to change their mind and agency and a whole bunch of other things that they do not. It's very probable that those divine beings, they are one-dimensional almost in what they're able to do. They either love or they hate. They don't have the agency to change up the way we do. So the devil, he is locked into the way he behaves because of decisions that he made a long time ago. Again, we won't get into that. But it locked him into a role. And so he really has less agency than he would like to think he does. In Isaiah 14, and we'll end with this, it gives you a profile of what got him in trouble and where he's headed. It says that because of 5 I wills, he was cast down. I will be like the Most High. I will sit in the heavens. In other words, he would take Yahweh's place. That was his attempt. He failed miserably at that. He is a counterfeit God. He's the God of this age, is what Paul refers to him as. But he's nothing like. There's none beside Yahweh. And he, because of his I wills, he was cast down. And Isaiah 14 talks about a day coming when the world, human beings, will gather around some kind of a pit or some kind of a place where the devil will be on display. And we will look at him. He will be defeated at that point. He will be completely defanged at that point. And he will be ineffectual at that point. And he will be judged at that point. But we will look at him, humans will look at him and say, is this the one who shook kingdoms and didn't let his prisoners go free? This? And he won't be terribly impressive because he is what Jesus described as the father of lies. More than anything, he's a masquerade. And his greatest masquerade is that he is God's equal. He is not. That kind of dualism is more akin to Manichaeism than it is to what you see in the Old Testament and the New Testament. So he is not God's equal. He is not God's opposite, not even close. But in his judgment, we will look at him and we will marvel that this insignificant nothing of a creature was able to wreak all of the havoc he did. And he does it because he's a master liar. So everything that happens in the world by way of destruction or chaos, lunacy, ugliness, child molested, genocide, war on a hideous scale, it's because somebody believed a lie. Not because he's that powerful, but somebody believed a lie. So the question is, can the devil not do what he's been predicted to do? No, he doesn't have that agency. He's already cast his lot. He's thrown the dice in a certain direction. He's already been judged. He's already been cast down. And at the cross and resurrection event, the Ephesian letter tells us that at some point a display was made of him and his, and a formal announcement of some kind was made whereby their authority was taken away. And now the only power they're left with, as I said, is the power to deceive. Because Jesus now says he has all authority and all power, not the enemy. So
Okay, that's all we have time for.
Then that's all we will do. Well, as we said, we're with Alta Vista Assembly in beautiful bucolic East Bakersfield, California. We're a strong church. We're a good church. We're a multifaceted church. We're doing all kind of things to improve the quality of life at home and around the world. And we're privileged to do that. I don't want to go on a brag session, but I am proud of my church. And if you are in the Bakersfield area, you're in our neighborhood this coming Lord's Day. 10 o'clock is our English service. 2 o'clock is a Spanish language service. And then at 5 o'clock, Pastor Chris comes back with new wine in English as well. And you would be welcome at any and all of those. As I said, if you don't have a good home church, please come and check us out. This weekend is our annual church picnic where all of our groups will pull together. And for those that are part of that, it's at beautiful Jastrow Park. And the dinner starts at 12, activities about 1:15ish, and we're just going to have a great time. It's going to be a great, great time. So we're doing all kind of things. We've got all kind of things lined up. You may want to take a look at our website. That'll give you a little indication of what we're about and how we're a little bit different maybe than some other churches and other assemblies, other groups. But if you're in our neighborhood, you'd be most welcome. As we referenced our Tuesday night, we always live stream that on YouTube and our Facebook channel,
YouTube
the
and
Facebook
Facebook.
page rather. And that's about 6 o'clock or
6
so.
o'clock.
We'll do our best this week to make it 6
Well,
o'clock.
I also get off and have to come all the way over there. So
I know.
It's a big.
I know. He makes it happen. I mean, he makes this happen. And so anytime it's a success, it's him. And conversely, anytime there's just a major
It is also
faux pas,
me.
it falls squarely on your shoulders. And I'm just a guilty bystander. But anyway, so we do that on Tuesday night. You may want to check that out. Those are also archived, aren't they?
Yeah, they're all. on
So if
our
you want to go
YouTube
back and look,
everywhere.
and we'll touch on some of that unseen realm stuff in there. But we also drop our Sunday morning later in the afternoon at
2 and 2:15.
2 and 2:15, the worship package and the message. And we got a comment from somebody in Fiji, but we and Nepal today. But we have had
And
people
someone in Udhampur. I don't know how to say that. Do you know how to say that?
Udhampur.
Yeah, Udhampur. I don't know where that is.
That's in India.
Okay.
That's Vijay in India. But we have people all over the states that are watching, and even in our area. But we've had people in Sri Lanka, other places that look at our worship package, learn our songs, look at our message, and kind of replicate that a little bit. And so that's kind of an honor. We're glad to be able to reach that far. So again, we drop that at 2 o'clock and 2:15 on Sunday. So there are some ways you can stay connected with us online, or maybe connect with us this weekend live. But in either case,